Sonic Adventure 2, regarded as one of the best Sonic games of all time and highly praised by critics and fans alike. Sonic Adventure 2 was the successor to Sonic Adventure, the game that made the transition from 2D to 3D. But today, we are not going to discuss how good the game is. Today, I'll show you the cut content, the betas, the demos, the secrets and the things that you probably didn't know about the game. Most of the stuff covered is already documented on the Sonic Wiki, Sonic Retro, the Cutting Room Floor and Hidden Palace, so this video is for those of you who are too lazy to do the research yourselves. I also want to shout out Peeps Highway, who has also documented most of the stuff I'll cover extensively, so I recommend checking them out. I also recommend checking out Cybershell's bonus videos on Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, as that's where I got the video and title idea from. If you have never watched one of these videos before, I always like to start by covering the cut content first, and then analyze some betas, demos and prototypes, and then end with a little bit of trivia, showing some features like a debug menu and just some obscure facts. Sonic Adventure 2 has 3 distinct versions, and each one presents its own oddities and tons of cut content and prototypes. These are the original Dreamcast release, SA2 Battle and the 2012 re-release. I'll cover each one's cut content by order of release first, so let's start by covering the original Dreamcast version. The trial, preview and May 7 prototypes that I will get into further in the video all contain an extensive debug mode that could be accessed by enabling certain flags. In the final version, this mode has been entirely removed with the exception of a few leftover features. While it can't be seen in-game normally, the only remaining part of the debug display left in the game is a mode that, when activated, will highlight any geometry the character is currently colliding with. This mode is still present in future releases. One file contains an early level and boss list, missing several stages present in the final game and featuring some interesting boss names, like Golem or Biohazard. The Sega logo is slightly different in the Japanese version of the game. It's lighter, as it's usually the case, although not always, and a few pixels higher than the one used in other versions. The game runs a disk check to make sure it is being run from an official GD-ROM rather than a copied disk. If this check fails, Eggman will fall through the floor when he starts his section of Cannon Score, although the level can still be completed by navigating to the end. This cannot happen on emulators, even when using a pirated copy. If the game disk is inserted into a PC, a set of wallpapers can be found, as well as a short history of Sonic games up until the game's release. It's well known at this point that Sonic's shoes were changed to soap shoes late in development. However, the majority of SA2 was done at that point, so there's still a bunch of leftovers. The Hero Story intro has Sonic wearing his classic shoes until he jumps onto the wing. The shuttle launch scene in the Dark Story still shows them, likely due to it being a pre-rendered cinematic, and one of the screenshots in the credits shows his classic shoes. All 3 of these were fixed in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, but all of the game's artwork still depicted him in his classic shoes prior to the 2012 port. Famously, the trial uses his classic shoes. Present in all of Sonic's cutscene texture files are textures for the shoes, the original Lightspeed shoe upgrade and a number of blank files. Of note is that these textures feature red soles, as opposed to the grey soles seen in the trial and early screenshots. Now let's take a look into some unused stages. There are 3 test levels that were used during the game's development and removed from the final game that were known as Basic Test, Knuckles Test and Sonic Test respectively. Although one of these, that being Basic Test, would later be included with the GameCube version, all 3 levels are absent from the Dreamcast version. The textures for the test levels can be found in the game's files. Certain files contain object layouts and camera information for Knuckles' test. Despite the stage not being there, it seems to follow the same basic blueprint as basic test, and thus its files can be replaced to create a somewhat playable version of the stage. There is a single camera angle at the center of the stage that seems to circle around Knuckles, focusing a non-existent object in the center of the map. The first two Master Emerald shards can randomly spawn in several enemies, which seem to make incorrect sounds, or in several preset locations in the ground. The third one is always in the same place, but it seems to be completely inaccessible however. Mission tags for 2 of the stages can be found. Japanese hint tags for Knuckles' test can be found in a file. It contains 5 weird-ass strings for some reason. There are objects located out of view in White Jungle. They include floating platforms, lines of rings, more dash pads, 2 invisibility capsules, a weird spinning object, and numerous beetle robots. These objects don't seem to have much connection and are located in such a way that the player would never see them normally. The objects were rearranged in the GameCube version. They contain the same kind of format, but the capsules are gone, the odd spinning object is gone, and the beetles perform different actions, more specifically, nothing. These are actually leftovers from a very early version of Green Forest. The attributes of some objects are broken, such as launch panels, but if the object files for Green Forest are replaced with the ones from White Jungle, the out-of-bounds objects match up to the stage perfectly. The version of Green Forest seen here is very incomplete, with some objects suggesting it may even be older than the one shown in the E3 2000 trailer. 2 files contain an unused object layout for City Escape in 2-player mode that is very different from both the normal version of the level and the version that appears in SA2 Battle. This layout is interesting in that it resembles the version of City Escape from the trial more than the one in the final game. The full list of graphics for 2-player locations includes Green Hill. This implies Green Hill was going to be playable with 2 people, but even when it's unlocked, it's only 1 player. Further digging reveals that the stage is actually an option in the game's 2-player stage select, but it's hidden. According to the game's code, it's unlocked when you get 180 emblems. However, there is nothing to let the menu go down that far. Despite using the same object layout as 1-player mode, the stage works normally in 2-player mode and even includes proper pose and start points for both characters. Now let's take a look at some unused objects. In Iron Gate, after the first locked door, there is a room with an elevator that leads to a tight tunnel, and after that, you drop into a room. Before that room, to the right, there is a dashpad inside the wall. Near the start in White Jungle, there is a dashpad that was misplaced and is right below the starting tunnel of the level. Additionally, there are 2 on either side of the one that Shadow falls on to start the level that are slightly below the tunnel, enough to be useless. If one uses cheats to play as Sonic or Shadow on Meteor Herd, a hidden rail can be found. One end begins on the central tower, leads sharply downwards and features 2 successive loops, and the other ends near the starting point. Knuckles can't grind in this game, so that is why nobody stumbled upon this invisible rail when playing casually. If Shadow turns around and grinds backwards on the starting rail in Final Chase, he will find that the rail actually starts quite a bit back compared to where he starts. However, it doesn't have any collision until it reaches a nearby spring, which is what the game uses to put Shadow on the rail at the start of the stage in the first place. There are a few hidden rings that can be found in bizarre locations in certain levels, usually below the starting point. It's impossible to obtain them normally without dying or using a lightning shield to draw them in. Here is an unused object that was meant to be pushed and pulled by the character, and a leftover hint box from Sonic Adventure. and a leftover item box, also from Sonic Adventure. And here is some kind of reference object. And now let's take a look at some unused graphics. According to an unused line from Omochao,
watch the enemy detector which is next to the emerald radar. If the detector lights up, be careful.
this was gonna be used as a radar for Egg Quarters that was planned to detect the beetle robots patrolling the stage. It would have been located next to the objective's radar and flashed when the robots were nearby. There is a capsule graphic of a ring with a question mark on it as opposed to a 5, 10 or 20. According to the original file name, this would have given the player a random amount of rings. The Dark Story Scene Select has the option to start the game at the second Sonic boss. However, the player must complete a stage before they are able to access the equivalent part of the hero story, as its Scene Select doesn't include the option to start at the boss. The icon for the option does exist though, and it's slightly different to the icon that was used for the Dark Story. This screen was meant to appear on Eggman's monitor in the cutscene where Eggman finds that Sonic's group made it to the Space Colony Ark from the Pyramid Base, but it's never shown. To top it all off, the emerald Tails is holding has the wrong color, it's white as opposed to yellow. All of the unlockable 2-player mode characters, that being Amy, Metal Sonic, Chao Walker, Big, Tikal and Chaos, have their own life icons, but they are never seen due to the 2-player mode not using the live system. There are 2 graphics in the GD-ROM that imply via file name that they would have been used on the 2-player menu, but they aren't. These graphics are very much like the final menu, only less polished. They feature the same options, used and unused, and were likely used before the final graphics were complete. The original file name for this one is main_menu_button. It would have been used on the main menu somehow, with the text laid on top of the graphic, not having a separate graphic for each option. The File Select menu uses a different set of icons for buttons that aren't highlighted. The icons in the Options menu also have this alternate set, but none of them are used because the buttons there always use the first icon. There is also an icon for the Dreamcast 4X memory card, which in the File Select menu replaces the VMU icon when one is plugged in. The button in the Options menu is always a regular VMU regardless of what is plugged in though. The alternate icons were removed in the ports aside from the memory card and the Rumble Pack, which were given new graphics in each version despite being unused. There are a handful of tutorial screens that were not implemented for whatever reason. This one was gonna be used for explaining Mystic Melody with Tails. Normally, when an upgrade is obtained, screens in the tutorial are subsequently unlocked. This would have been for after Tails or Eggman gets Mystic Melody, but even when they are collected, this screen does not come up. This one was for explaining button prompts, a different graphic was used instead. This one was for testing the tutorial screens probably. And this one was for explaining special attacks during 2-player. In order to get more character menu themes, the themes needed to be downloaded online. However, the Shadow, Amy, Omochao, Maria and Secretary themes were never made officially available, therefore making their audio and graphics unused. The themes still exist and are unlockable in the GameCube version, but the background used for each theme was changed. When Sonic performs the light dash, an after-image model can be seen for the duration of the technique. This isn't the case for Shadow, but he does have the appropriate model stored in the game files along with the rest of his model data. Sonic Adventure 2 Trial version, not to be confused with the Sonic Adventure 2 The Trial, something that I will also get into further in the video, was released roughly a month before the final release. As can be expected, there are leftovers of this demo still on the final game, unused of course. Now let's get into some unused content in cutscenes. Most cutscenes that are seen in the game read their information from a compressed source. There are two exceptions to this rule, E0203 and E0210, which are the cutscenes where everyone listens to Gerald's diary and the credit sequence in the last story respectively. The versions that are used by the game are uncompressed, while the compressed versions aren't used at all. Editing them to become readable by the game reveals that they are either incomplete or from an earlier point in development. In E0203, Knuckles sports the old sunglasses model and a full version of his hammer gloves, and Rouge's treasure scope is complete instead of missing the eyepiece. And in E0210, Knuckles' glove upgrades are present in the data, but never render in this scene, and while Amy isn't present in the data at all, her drop shadow is still rendered throughout the scene. There is an unused in-level cutscene stored in a file that displays Sonic doing a short animation for his head and hands. It lasts for 20 seconds and has a texture mapping error where the texture for the flame ring is used for Sonic's sclera. The error was fixed in the video you are seeing and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, even though the cutscene is unused there as well. Two specific files are used to display timestamps before in-game events or stages, actually being small events that last only a few frames. These events seem to be built from a partially blanked version of the sequence scene in mini-event 0012, as Sonic hands float behind the camera and perform the same animation. Some events in SA2 include unused lighting data from earlier versions of the cutscenes. For some reason, SA2 Battle enables them all at once, causing issues. In the intro for Dark Story, one texture actually has its own name drawn at the top of it. The two scenes in the arc score before the Super Transformation contain an early version of Super Shadow's body texture, making him silver rather than gold. The Ark's control room display uses an earlier texture when Shadow introduces it to Eggman. Notably, the main font is different and the danger box for the dark ending says Alert in the earlier version. The redesigned Power OK icon in the later version is never used. Now let's get into some unused Chao Garden content. Surprisingly, there are also tons of unused content for the Chao Garden. There is a big thread over on Chao Island that shows a lot of what is known to be in there. Most of them actually come from SA2 Battle, but it's better to cover it in this version section since it also includes unused Dreamcast elements. While the game contains 20 unique types of Chao, only 10, including downloadable Chao, can be obtained normally. Most of the unobtainable breeds are normally only ever seen in certain Chao races, but can be seen in the garden through cheats. Two breeds of Chao go unused altogether, with no way of seeing nor obtaining them normally. These are actually part of a group of 3 along with the Moon Chao. However, the Moon Chao wouldn't be rendered fully unobtainable, as it was available via download until SA2 Battle. The Chao Kindergarten was once planned to work very differently to the way it works in the final game, including having more online features and rooms that were ultimately left unused. It appears that the black market was originally going to be part of the game like in SA2 Battle, as opposed to a feature in the official website. This picture is mounted up on the wall inside the Chao Kindergarten, showing a playground that was supposed to be included in the kindergarten. This picture was removed in the GameCube version. Textures extracted from within the game seem to match up with the picture from the kindergarten, hinting that this may have been intended to be a playable area. Geometry discovered in the PC version. This shot shows what the area looks like when the extracted textures are applied to this geometry. There was, at one point, going to be a library. Its textures file name references the kindergarten, which may mean that you were able to access it from there. In the library, you would have been able to download or create new stories for Chao Adventure 2. While this was never fully implemented, Chao Adventure 2 still has the modular design needed to support multiple stories. The disk has one file representing a blank Chao Adventure 2 VMU program with no Chao or stories loaded, which is combined with the Chao data and story files. It's possible to run the blank program on a VMU without crashing, and it displays a message that no Chao is available. The disk has 10 story files, with 2 files for each language. There is a lot of text related to online features for the Chao kindergarten that didn't make it into the final game. The health center in the kindergarten has unused lines for a Chao's relationship with Amy, who isn't playable outside 2-player modes. There is a list of Chao items that includes several entries for items that are not available in the final game, including a coffin and firecrackers. There are lines that suggest that the player was once able to view their Chao through a different camera. And there is still one thing to cover in this version, and that is unused audios. But before that, I wanna cover another thing that was also scrapped. There is a world ranking button in the extras menu that is disabled by default. During the game's development, this button led to the world ranking menu, part of SA2's scrapped online features. Selecting the option now only brings the player to a blank screen with the options menu music playing and soft locks the game, as the menu has been almost entirely removed. The button to enter the menu can be enabled by editing some code. Elements from this menu still exist and can be seen by enabling various flags in the emblem results menu. The menu has various features such as current ranking and last update, as well as the 4 search modes: total ranking, score attack, time attack and emblem, although they can't be selected normally via the emblem results menu in this way, as well as the menu itself, and the red X from the download event menu can be found. There are many unused elements related to connecting to the system hidden in the game. There was a login and registration. The rankings could have been searched by country or name, and it referred to the world ranking system as the Sonic Network. This text can be found in every language. The images are the remnants of the world ranking menu's textures. It's really sad to see something like this being scrapped, as it would have been really cool to use. But now for real, let's get into the unused audios to finish off the original Dreamcast release. There are tons and tons of unused audios that go unused in this version. These include several scrapped alternate lines for the story, stage quotes, unused songs, unused audios for the world ranking, and tons of unused audios for the Chao Garden. Most of them are in Japanese since that version's script is done first. There are multiple videos on the internet that show these audios and also mods that restore them, and you can also check the very well documented The Cutting Room Floor page to check them out if you want. Some unused audios were either repurposed for episodes of Sonic X, ultimately used in SA2 Battle, or just not used at all. Some suggest the existence of cutscenes that were scrapped entirely, or story elements that were cut due to them not making much sense or just being unnecessary. So yeah, check it out if you're interested in that. Now let's get into Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, a re-release of the game for the GameCube. It contains its own oddities when compared to the original version. Using an action replay code lets you access a debug mode that, when triggered, displays debug info on the bottom portion of the screen. The files for the original intro event from the Dreamcast version can still be found unused in the game's event directory, with some differences. A part of the Skyrail stage, used in a dark story cutscene, is just out of view in the scene leading into Mission Street. The extra geometry is not present in the Dreamcast version. The Chao breed system was significantly reworked between SA2 and SA2 Battle. While the majority of unused Chao from the original version were removed, more unused Chao can be found. Along with the unobtainable Chao in this version are the unique types of eggs for them. The only Chao without a corresponding egg is the Moon Chao. Another set of eggs can be found alongside these. The Chao associated with these eggs are only able to be obtained through breeding, so these eggs never appear. Just like most of the other eggs in the game, shiny variations of each egg can be found. Menu graphics for various pre-release versions of the game can be found in the files. A very early title can be found in the games files. Here, the game is simply called Sonic Adventure 2 GameCube. Unlike the other screens, this one is simply a static image similar to the original game. Pieces of the title screen from the version that appeared with the game's announcement at Space World 2001 could be found, still using the original logo and featuring a subtitle. The image you can see is a mock-up of what the title screen looks like when assembled. The background used for this version is slightly different to the one used in the final game. The characters are on opposite sides, the Chao are in different locations, and the floating orbs are part of the background image itself rather than their own separate effects. The stage select menu for this version can be found in one file. The player could choose from City Escape or Green Forest, with the option to play in one player or two player mode. Another file contains this image, which was used at the end of the demo. At some point during development, Sonic and Shadow in their super forms were planned to be playable in two-player modes, accessed in the same way as their alternate costumes. Both super forms can be found in the two-player character select menu with cheats. However, they are incomplete. Choosing either of them will just result in regular Sonic or Shadow appearing once the match starts. There are lines of text related to the two summarizing their abilities that aren't displayed even when they are selected in the two-player menu. Also hidden in the game is the supposed method of unlocking them, clearing Green Hill with an A rank. In the final game, completing Green Hill with an A rank doesn't give you anything and the two can't be unlocked in any way. There are 75 hidden rings under the spawn of the hard mode layout of Metal Harbor, located in the same spot at the 000 coordinates. These rings were not in the Dreamcast version. A number of the new stage additions to two-player mode in this version of the game are modified versions of regular stages. Some of them include out-of-bounds objects from the one-player stage they originated from. Racing stages where the goal ring was removed to an earlier point still contain objects from the original stage after the area where the new goal ring is located, whereas others only have individual objects or stage features. And that's about it for the GameCube version of SA2 Battle. Now let's get into the 2012 port for the PS3, the Xbox 360 and Windows. The Battle branding was released as a DLC, and unlike the other two ports, this one actually manages to add some enhancements, even though it still contains some unused content. The background for the title screen includes text for trial versions. While they are used in the console versions, the PC version doesn't have a trial version. Previous versions of the game had a tutorial option in the extras menu where Omochao would provide the player with a guide on how to play the game. This tutorial was replaced in this version, but the original Omochao version as well as the option for it are still in the game. This tutorial menu is identical to the one used in the GameCube version. In the Steam version, one file's export contains a list of 4 models of GameCube memory cards in a box with a slot indicator above them, one each for slot A and slot B in English and Japanese. Additionally, 4 files contain textures for the GameCube model that appears in the back of the GameCube version save file select screen. And that covers a lot of the cut content in this game. Now let's analyze the demos, betas and trailers of the game. I will cover the E3 2000 trailer, the Beta 2000 trailer, a trailer I don't know how to identify but it exists, the Space World 2001 trailer and the TGS 2001 trailer. As for the betas and prototypes, I'll cover the version known as the trial, the preview build, the trial version, the May 7 2001 prototype, the review build and the demo for SA2 Battle. This might be enjoyable for you, but I know it won't be enjoyable to edit. Not even Sonic 06 had this much to cover. Anyways, I'll start by covering the trailers as they are faster to cover. I won't show the entirety of each trailer as it would take a lot of time, so I'll analyze everything of interest and will leave the links in the description if you want to check them out. Let's start by analyzing the E3 2000 trailer. Sonic Adventure 2 was first announced at E3 2000, and this trailer has many differences from the final. Only City Escape, Green Forest, Skyrail, Pumpkin Hill and Iron Gate are shown in the video, though screenshots also show Aquatic Mine and the Chao Garden. Sonic is wearing his normal shoes. This was changed to soap shoes in the final. Tails, Rouge and Shadow's gameplay are absent, due to them not originally being playable. The rest of City Escape doesn't exist, just a long path that isn't in the final. There are 2 robots present that aren't there in the final. There is a lot of complex camera work that isn't present in the final. Sonic is seen in Skyrail, in the final only Shadow goes through it. And that's about it for the E3 trailer. Now let's get into the Beta 2000 trailer. Oddly, there actually exists a version of this trailer that doesn't look like shit. This trailer uses the early SA2 logo. Sonic still uses his classic shoes in this trailer. The texture used for the bird's eye view photo of City Escape looks different from what is seen in the final version. And Sonic is seen in Skyrail again. Now let's get into that trailer I don't know how to refer to. Sonic is now using his soap shoes for the first time. Rouge, Tails and Eggman are now shown to be playable. Tails is using the Tornado 2 from Sonic Adventure 1 in one cutscene. Also, the water isn't animated. And now let's get into the Space World 2001 trailer. The first footage of SA2 on the GameCube was released by Sega. The port is still in mid-development at this point, with bugs present in the trailer. There is no battle subtitle at this point. A lot of Pyramid Cave's background objects haven't been implemented yet, instead showing up as rings. The B button prompt appears broken and still uses the Dreamcast graphic. And for last, let's cover the TGS 2001 trailer. The trailer shows an almost finished game, with just a few minor differences. This footage was reused for a different trailer that was included in Sonic Mega Collection. For some reason, Pyramid Cave's sky is black. Trees in City Escape suffer from transparency issues. Some parts of Final Rush glitch out the lighting or fail to load. And now let's get into the demos and prototypes of the game, starting by SA2 The Trial. Sonic Adventure 2 The Trial is a demo of SA2 that was bundled with Phantasy Star Online, 6 months before SA2's release, being the only accessible version of the game where Sonic wears his regular shoes. The build date of this demo is estimated to have been made during the second half of November 2000 and the start of December of the same year. The trial should not be confused with SA2 Trial version, which is a much later demo that certain Japanese stores received. Seeing as this demo is only a sliver of the final, there are bound to be unused graphics. Most of these are used on the final and are only in the demo because they are grouped with textures that are needed for the demo. Available as a simple bitmap image file on the ROM is a map of City Escape. There are various icons for item boxes from other stages that aren't used in the demo. One of the more obvious differences from the final is the SA2 logo. It contains most of the same characteristics of the final one, just less colors and style. The overall title screen is fairly different, but like the logo, it has the same elements, just dark. While it's barely visible, Sonic's artwork in the background of the title screen is based on an alternate version of his portrait that isn't wearing the soap shoes. Sonic Wind has a different name and animation in the demo. In the demo, the attack is called Long Range Homing and contains a swirl of bright colors in comparison to the rough blue swirl of the final. In the one cutscene of this demo, there are a few changes. Obviously, Sonic is wearing different shoes. In the final, Sonic starts out wearing regular shoes for some reason, but switches midway through. In the final, music starts playing lightly in the background while the gun pilot communicates with the radio tower.
This is Control Tower. We have you on radar. Report cargo status of captured Hedgehog aboard. Over.
The music changes to a more exciting song once Sonic busts out of the plane.
Didn't copy that. Over.
He's taken out everyone aboard. And
What's wrong?
What in the
Come
world?
in. Over.
Freeze! What do you think you're doing? Get that hedgehog!
In the demo, no music plays until Sonic busts out.
Loose it off.
A notable difference of this demo from the final is in this cutscene, at the part where the gun pilot says,
Secured on board and what?
Didn't copy.
in the demo, this was translated in the subtitles as what the hell. Clearly, someone decided that Sonic games shouldn't have curse words, at least for now. The light shoes are fully functional, but Sonic only wears them in the gameplay demo. Like his regular shoes, these also have a different design to the final game. The Flame Ring's Fire Somersault has a simpler effect in this version, lacking the fire in front of Sonic. A number of ads in this version of City Escape are different to the ones seen in the final game. The mission for the demo is simply find the gold ring. It's also labeled as the first mission even though there are no other missions available. In the final, the first mission of City Escape is escape from the military pursuit. Shortly after the boarding segment, there is an area where Sonic is led straight up a ramp and onto a platform. From this platform, a 10-ring capsule can be hit with Sonic's homing attack. On the demo, this capsule is a bit further away than it is on the final. The small area where Sonic obtains the magic hands is completely different, having a different crate layout and camera angle. It also lacks the enemies and the upgrade itself. If the player attempts to load any other stage, they will be presented with a placeholder title card displaying the name of the stage in that slot. In the final, attempting to load a stage that doesn't exist will just cause the game to freeze. There are still some very slight differences that I didn't cover because they are not very interesting, so that is basically it for this demo. Now let's get into the preview build. This is a demo of Sonic Adventure 2 that was sent to the press in order to gain publicity for the game. The demo includes a level for each character, as well as 2-player mode for each type of gameplay. This version is dated March 18 of 2001, 3 months before the game's release. The title screen is very close to the one used in the final game. Under the game's logo, a preview label is added. There is a glow effect behind the logo not present in the final, and the text in the bottom left corner is slightly different. Similar to how Sonic Adventure contains an unused beta version title screen, one file contains an alternate Alpha Plus version title screen that was presumably used for other early builds of the game. Despite the English dub being completed at the time of this build's creation, the subtitle lines that can be found in one file seem to use a much earlier draft of the English script/translation, with many lines, particularly for the Shadow and Sonic confrontation scenes, having overly literal and unusual sentences, such as Sonic calling Shadow poser instead of faker, among other things. Every character, except for Tails, has one cutscene play before their stage. The scenes themselves differ from the final games in many small ways. Each cutscene uses the wrong voice clips, as the English voice tracks were not fully implemented yet.
What do you think you're doing? Get that hedgehog!
What's wrong? Come in. Over?
The flashback scenes with Maria and everything before it are cut for the preview in Shadow's Radical Highway cutscene, leaving the scene much shorter than it is in the final. Sonic's light shoes use the earlier model from the trial in his cutscene. Knuckles' upgrades can't be seen in-game normally, but his sunglasses also have a different cutscene model. His hammer gloves were also removed from cutscenes in the final. Now for some graphical differences, objects such as containers are lit differently. The posters in City Escape use the same textures as the final, with the exception of the Chao in Space and Pizza posters, which use the textures from the trial. The wall that can be dug into to access different areas in the hunting stages has a different center. There are some Japanese voice leftovers here that are removed entirely in the final and do not have any English equivalents, though while some of these are absent in the final, they can still be found as subtitles in some files in the final game. This contains scrapped voice lines for some cutscenes and weirdly screams from Sonic and Shadow. These are actually supposed to be the roars that BioLizard makes after Knuckles finishes his speech to stop the Chaos Emeralds in Last Story, but because these clips are heavily filtered in the final game, you can't make them out. There are voice quotes of the default menu theme voice that can be found in this build, and they sound completely different compared to the final.
Story select, scene select, character select, stage select, type select, recalls, group select, game select, lessons, options, sound test, access to the world, file select, system alert, congratulations, world ranking, emblem recalls, kart racing, download events, theme select, TV setting, access to the database. Please wait.
They are most likely meant to be placeholders and replaced with the final voice for obvious reasons. This unfiltered English Omochao line somehow found its way into both English and Japanese voice archives.
Press A button and use L or R triggers while grinding to jump from rail to rail.
Why and how it's here is anyone's guess. To top it all off, the control scheme he explains is not possible in the final game, nor in any of the earlier builds for that matter, as none of the available levels have more than one rail to choose from, and it wouldn't end up being similarly implemented until Sonic Unleashed in 2008. The game contains demo files for Iron Gate, Pumpkin Hill, Skyrail and Weapons Bed that can't be found in the final game. Iron Gate and Weapons Bed in particular were made using an earlier version of the stage, as Eggman ignores many objects blocking his way and the demo desyncs midway. After completing any level, the player will go back to the title screen. The only exception to this is City Escape, which will send the player to Green Forest. The indoor section of Wild Canyon doesn't have the correct lighting. The area with the second and third pillars in Sand Ocean has a different object layout to that of the final, with an extra fence, a wooden container which is not shown, and springs present. This is the same for the area just after the fourth pillar, which shows even more changes. And that's basically everything for the preview build. Now let's get into the trial version. Sonic Adventure 2 trial version was given to certain stores in Japan. The build date of this demo is May 3, 2001, less than a month before the release of the final. It includes the same levels as the preview build, but the only playable characters are Sonic and Shadow this time. Due to the build date of this version, there are fewer differences in this version of the game compared to the previous demo, as well as a lot of changes made specifically for this version of the game. However, the differences that are present give some useful insight into the last month of the game's development. The title screen has text in the bottom left corner indicating that it is a trial, along with slightly different text below it. The logo displayed on the VMU is slightly different to the one used in the final. Sonic and Shadow's upgrades have been replaced with life boxes for this version. The area with the third collapsing pillar in Sand Ocean is similar to the layout seen in the preview build, but it has 3 single springs instead of a large one. On track 1 of Trial Version's disc is a wallpaper unique to this version of the game. And that is basically it for the trial version. Now let's get into the May 7, 2001 prototype. This prototype of SA2 was released on December 30th of 2020 by DRX. To date, it and the review builds are the only 2 full SA2 prototypes. Despite being dated only 3 weeks before completion, it shows a multitude of differences and several fully functional debug menus. 2-player play does not fade out if only one controller is plugged in, but selecting it in this state does nothing. The homepage button uses a unique graphic when it detects no internet registration rather than simply being faded out. This graphic is still in the final game, but isn't used. The options menu has a few differences. The jump pack menu is accessible even if there is no jump pack in the controller. The Hero Story intro has a different lighting than in the final game. The scene where Amy rescues Sonic from Prison Island has a darker lighting and an odd blue tint that isn't present in the final. The view of the planet during the credits is at a different angle. The glow around the planet was adjusted in the final game to prevent it from looking blocky. The Omochao tutorial presents some differences compared to the final game. As I've mentioned previously, this build presents several fully functional debug options, which we'll take a look into now. Free movement mode is available and does what it's advertised really. Entering this mode will cause Sonic to fall off of his board if he's using one. An object editor is present in this version and fully works. It can view any object in the stage and explains properties related to said object, place new ones and edit those that already exist. While the editor is open, every hidden object in the map is made visible. There exists a camera editor in this menu. Upon entering this editor, the player can view and edit any camera in the stage or create new ones. There are 2 menus in this editor, the main editor and the point editor. The main one can add, edit, remove and generate data about cameras in the current stage. The point editor is used to place different markers that seem to be related to camera pathing. There is a sound test present in the menu, accessible by the 4th controller and can play any currently loaded sound effect. Event Test is a cutscene viewer in all versions of the game. Event Test can be accessed via the debug menu system. Entering a cutscene will present multiple options, such as a debug camera mode that allows you to control the camera. When debug mode is active, buttons can be pressed on the pause menu for various purposes that are explained on screen. Pressing B makes all object hitboxes visible. Colliding with any of them displays a message with the type of collision and a line showing the box the player touched. The range that objects such as Omochao can be picked up is also visible. This setting decreases the max draw distance. It's usually off for 1-player mode and on for 2-player mode. The 3rd controller can activate a very large editor in Chao world that can manipulate almost anything in the Chao world. This includes Chao, unlock flags and a free camera independent from the one in the camera editor. Parameter displays all stats for a selected Chao. This includes hidden behavior values such as the Chao sleepiness and personality sliders. Race stats are to the right and show both the Chao's current stat and the cap for automatic stat gain. Like shows the selected Chao's bond with the player character. Shape manipulates the Chao's gradual evolution sliders. To the left is magnitude. Higher values affect the Chao's shape more. In the center is whether the gradual evolution is fly, run, power, swim or a combination of those. And to the right is hero and dark alignment. Group can instantly change the Chao's main evolution type. Buyo allows you to move the selected Chao. Move does the same as Buyo but slower, making precise movement easier. Motion shows a list of all Chao animations and can apply them to the Chao. Motion check is similar to motion, but plays the animation in the editor instead of waiting for the player to exit. Parts until mouth texture changes the Chao's appearance according to what it represents. SE until stage SE just plays sound effects, Chao voice clips, songs that the Chao sing, and sounds related to the map, such as waterfall sounds. C switch disables parts of the Chao AI. Motion disables animations. Move disables their movement, and behavior lets you change values present in the parameter section that we've already seen. W switch displays information about the current garden. Garden flag until toy flag don't do anything interesting. FreeCam allows you to enter a mode where the camera can be controlled freely. There are also options that only appear in Chao races. These are Race Path Disp that shows the path Chao take during a race. Race Cam Disp shows every camera used in a race, as well as their triggers and target positions. And Race Cam Edit lets you edit the multiple camera angles seen in the race. And to close the prototype off, I also want to mention that there are tons, and I mean tons, of minimal and slight differences in stage layouts compared to the final, so I'm not really going to cover them because it would make this video longer than it already is. And to close off the Dreamcast prototypes, let's finally cover the review build. The European review prototype of SA2 is a build that was sent to the press about a week before the final build was completed, making it the only real full prototype. At this point, the game has been nearly finalized, with many bugs from the previous demos being fixed, though there are still some differences left, most of which being last minute. This build has a burn date of May 21st of 2001. Some hints for the fights between Tails and Eggman and Shadow and Sonic are different. And that is basically it really. And to close this section off, let's cover the demo of SA2 Battle. A playable demo and movie of SA2 Battle were released on the March 2002 interactive multi-game demo disc. There are few, if any, differences to the final game in terms of gameplay. However, it reuses the menu system from a TGS demo, giving some insight into how that demo worked and what it contained. The title screen is based on an earlier version. It fades in without any flash or logo movement, lacking the transitions from the final game. The textures from the final game's title screen and main menu are in the files but aren't used. It reuses the preview subtitle from the TGS demo. The background is almost the same as the final games, the only difference being that the background's floating orbs are still on the background itself. Their placement is flipped and slightly higher, but otherwise identical to the TGS version. Pressing start opens a menu asking the player if they want a one-player or two-player game. The faded unselected icons are also different to the ones from the TGS demo. After completing, leaving a stage or playing for 10 minutes, this screen is shown to the player. After that, it exits to the main demo disc menu. And that is all for the demos and trailers. Now let's get into the trivia. That was a lot, wasn't it? Anyways, as you might have realized by now, with the ports and all, there are bound to be some differences between the original Dreamcast release and SA2 Battle. So let's go through those differences now. The title screens are different. The main menu also presents some differences, missing the homepage option in the GameCube while also renaming 2-player play to 2-player battle. Actually, most menus look slightly different, sometimes with fewer options and other times with more options. All characters and objects are lit differently in the GameCube version. This is due to shaders used in the original game that aren't present in the GameCube version, so the object lighting looks slightly bland in comparison. All of the main character models were enhanced slightly for the GameCube release. The Lifebox icons were changed slightly. Notably, Sonic's icon uses a more up-to-date model than the Dreamcast version. The soap posters in City Escape, Radical Highway and Mission Street have not only been modified but also swapped around. City Escape uses Radical Highway's design, Radical Highway uses Mission Street's design, and Mission Street uses City Escape's design. When Knuckles and Rouge are close to one of their objectives, an exclamation point in a red bubble pops up above their heads in the GameCube version. This makes pinpointing a hidden emerald/key much easier. Selecting the type of match is done through the two-player menu itself in the GameCube version. In the original game, the match types were separated into Action, Kart Racing and Chao Racing on the main menu. In the Dreamcast version, one player is set to Hero and the other is set to Dark. In the GameCube version, individual characters are selected instead. This allows match combinations that were not possible in the Dreamcast version, such as Sonic vs Amy. Each alternate costume was redesigned in some way. Tails is the only character who retains the same costume from the Dreamcast version, albeit modified. All of the alternate characters are the same in the GameCube version with the exception of one. In the Dreamcast version, Eggman's alternate character slot is occupied by Big the Cat, who rides in Eggman's Walker. In the GameCube version, Big was replaced with a dark version of the Chao Walker. When picking up a Chao, the Dreamcast version only displays the Chao's name in a text bubble above its head. A window displaying the Chao's stats is used instead for the GameCube version, with the name being moved to the top of it instead of being in a bubble. The Chao Gardens also look different in each version, with some elements added or removed. Also, the design of the transporters was changed from a VMU to a GBA. There are a ton more differences that I didn't cover, such as cutscene differences or some less apparent or less interesting differences, so that covers the most important ones, I suppose. I will only cover one cutscene though, where these computer screens look very different from one version to another for some reason. There are also differences in basically every stage, so yeah, keep that in mind. Some range from very slight to pretty noticeable, and most were kind of needed, so yeah. Now I'll just get into easier to edit and more lightweight content. SA2 has a level called Sand Ocean, which shares its name with a series of courses from the F-Zero franchise. It becomes even weirder when Sega helped Nintendo develop F-Zero GX a few years later, which led to further deliberate references to F-Zero in Shadow the Hedgehog. Also, Prison Island. It will definitely ring bells to anyone who played Xenoblade Chronicles before this one and vice versa. Actually, for many people, the GameCube Battle port was their introduction to the Sonic series proper, due to it being the first Sonic game to appear on a Nintendo console. Who would have thought? The hero story opening and the beginning of City Escape, where Sonic breaks out of the helicopter and uses its door as a board to ride down the street, is inspired by an unused sequence for Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Back when Flying Battery Zone was in between Carnival Night and Ice Cap, the end of Flying Battery was planned to have Sonic break a door off of the airship and use it as a snowboard in the beginning of Ice Cap. The director was so angry at the negative reception for Big in the previous game that he took personal offense to it and put Big as a hidden secret in every stage as a spiteful act of vengeance towards everyone. During the cutscene where Sonic, Tails and Amy discuss Eggman blasting a hole in the moon, there is a sign in the background which references Nights from Nights into Dreams. During the game's development, Tails wasn't initially planned to be a playable character and was only added for story purposes. Series creator Yuji Naka was asked several times if Tails was going to be playable, but he gave different answers every time, ranging from wait and see to actually saying no. Eventually, he was added because of an outcry amongst fans. Many speculate that this is the reason that Tails pilots a mech in-game. However, since he's fully controllable without it in the Chao Garden, it was most likely changed at a later time to prevent inconsistencies with the playstyles the game has to offer. Even though the game has an E for everyone rating, it still has a mild lyrics warning. This is because both of the songs Deeper, the theme of Death Chamber, and Kick the Rock, the theme of Wild Canyon, use the word damn.
Stop being stubborn and think. Well, I guess you're right. You're damn right, Knuckles. I know Eggman's secrets.
Additionally, Kick the Rock refers to the character Rouge as sexy and smooth, followed by an innuendo referencing jewels in the next line.
I gotta chase a bat, huh? Yeah, Rouge, she's sexy and smooth. A double-cross spot thief, that's out for my jewels, I'm feeling her in mysterious ways. That's why I stay on point like every single day. I gotta protect this.
The parts in which both of the songs use the word damn are cut out of the loops found in the game, and can only be heard in the soundtrack versions. The Dreamcast version doesn't contain the warning, as the mild lyrics warning was added to the GameCube version, and is in the rating for every subsequent release. In several of Sonic's jumping animation frames, he appears to be wearing his regular shoes and not the soap shoes. It's possible for Tails to drown in the hero Chao garden. If he stands in the deep water for 20 seconds or so, a countdown will begin and he will start to drown. This does not deplete the player's lives, and it only works with Tails. This does not work in the GameCube installment as the water is not as deep. According to an unused audio file for Omochao, Eggman's mustache is fake.
Did you know the doctor's mustache is fake?
Except he doesn't. This voice clip is commonly said to reveal that Dr. Eggman's mustache is fake. However, in the Japanese audio, Omochao clearly refers to Dr. Chao, and his name is incorrectly translated to the Chao Doctor, since it actually means doctor as in someone with a doctorate, so he's actually a professor and he also has a mustache, which apparently is fake. In the Dreamcast version of the game, boxes in the Crazy Gadget level have green X's on them. These were changed to red X's for the GameCube version of the game. It's believed that the change was made because the logo of the Xbox is a green X. In City Escape, there is a hidden message in one of the posters. It says, Anti-XXXX XX2 Association. Since there is a 2 at the end of the XX and the number of letters matches up, it was thought to stand for Anti-Sony PS2 Association. At the time, the Dreamcast was being dominated by the PS2 in sales. The text was removed from later versions of the game. And that is all I have for this episode. This was a really tiring episode to make and it's probably an hour long by now, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed if you're still watching. I have made videos like this one for Sonic Heroes, Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations, which are a bit easier to digest, so I recommend checking them out if you want. I also have a Twitter if you want to follow me there, and I would really appreciate if you subscribe if you enjoy my content, as it really does help out a ton. If you have got any ideas of a Sonic game that I should cover next, feel free to leave it in the comments down below.